As protests continue across our nation, there is an array of emotions that we are experiencing. For some, the death of George Floyd and the protests following have brought about an uneasiness. Others feeling anger, sadness, helplessness. So here to help us get a handle on our feelings is psychologist Dr. Cheyenne Bryant. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it's very early out there on the West Coast, but your message is very important. So let me start by asking, many people are dealing with a variety of emotions. As I mentioned, obviously this is normal, but how do we tackle that?
Absolutely. We are in what we call double crisis. And so any emotions as far as anger or sadness or helplessness or even hopelessness is something that's extremely normal in a crisis like this. And, for some people, this is not just a double crisis, but if they were already experiencing trauma or crisis prior to the pandemic, then this would be something that's a triple crisis for a lot of these individuals. And so, yes, absolutely, certain emotions are going to be high. And for those who are anxiety prone, those anxiety levels are going to be at an all-time high, or at least higher than were prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, not to mention folks who have lost loved ones in the pandemic. So not only are you a psychologist, but you're also a community activist and the president of your local chapter of the NAACP. So let me ask you about the unrest. It is going on and it's going to divide communities, even friends and neighbors. So how do we deal with that divide?
This is the thing. Everything starts with self. And as a community, we have been disproportionately treated from everything from the justice system to human rights to civil rights to healthcare disparities. Continuing on to the COVID-19 crisis and pandemic, we have been at the disproportionately treated end. And so, again, our governor down here in California, Governor Newsom, said it best. The Black community is not the cause for what's going on. The cause for what's going on is that a Black man was murdered at the hands of an officer. Now, I do believe that every officer that is in uniform is not a bad officer, and I do believe that most officers, if not majority, are in agreement with the protesters, with the peaceful protesters, not the looters and not violent, but they do believe that what has taken place is not okay, and they don't condone it. And so as a community, it's very important for us to continue to use our voice, to continue to use our platform, to continue to lock hands with law enforcement and with other organizations that do support human rights and civil rights, and so that we can look at it from a place of peace and not panic, and a place of faith and not fear.
Let me ask you about parents out there, because we are human. We are seeing this. We are watching it. We have our own feelings. How do we make sure that we don't transfer that onto our children, but also help our children understand what's going on?
That is a great question. And, I always say for the young kiddos, it's really important to shelter them from the news and from negative information, because that can just be just far too traumatic for young kids. But when you get into young adults or even adolescents, this is the perfect learning experience for them. It is very important for parents to allow them to be a part of the dialogue, to check in with them and say, hey, how do you feel about what's going on? Okay. And even maybe sit down and create a plan of action with your adolescent, your teenage child or young adult, and say, what would you do, and what can you do, or what can we do as a family to be a part of the solution and not the problem? But keep the dialogue open, be completely honest and transparent with them. This is a chance to teach your child about human rights, about civil rights, about justice, and what that looks like and what that feels like. So use this as a positive learning experience, and don't shut them out.
Right.
But make sure you check in with them as well and say, hey, what do you need in this moment from mom or from dad or from grandma, whoever it is that's raising this child, for you to feel safe during this time.
Very good information right there. Good tips for parents and children. Dr. Bryant, thank you for your information and speaking with us today. We do appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you for having me. Have a wonderful Tuesday and be safe out